so I don't exactly know what's going on. I ended up having to reboot my computer from scratch to get anything to work. I was on before, and apparently the computer decided it didn't like me being on, so it kept every time I'd start something, it would Second Life would crash, and then it would take out the live stream app and Mixler. So I had to keep restarting them all, and I finally just gave up and restarted the whole computer. It said something about the drivers for the graphics or something was having some kind of issue. I had no idea. But whatever. Welcome to Second Life. Welcome to computers. So I am so glad you guys are here with us tonight. I'm so glad you're able to join us. We are not actually in a series for a change, and I know most of you who go here on a regular basis know that Michael Boyd, Pastor Mike, likes to preach in series because I feel like it helps us incorporate the information. Well, tonight is kind of a standalone sermon, and I don't do very many of those, but I thought it was rather appropriate since we're talking, in America, this coming Thursday is Thanksgiving. And so Thursday night, we won't have anything here at the church, but there'll be a Thanksgiving celebration. And I'm hoping and praying that I'm going to offer you a challenge. And here's my challenge. I've got some friends of mine who do this every year, and I thought, man, this is such a cool idea. And so I've been doing it this year. So what I want you to do, and I realize that you could have started this November 1st, and you've been done it all this time, but so what I want you to do is, starting today, starting maybe tomorrow morning, when you do your quiet time, what I want you to do is I want you to think about one thing that you can be thankful for, that you can be grateful for. Now, I realize you may not live in the United States, and if you're listening to this, there's a good possibility you live in England or France or wherever. So it doesn't, and I realize that other countries don't celebrate Thanksgiving the same way the United States does. Okay, so this is not about the holiday. This is talking about being grateful and thanking God for who He is. And so what I want you to do is over the next 30 days until you get to Christmas, I want you to pick one thing each day to thank God for. It needs to be something different every day, but I think you'll get the hang of it, and as you pass along, you'll start to realize just how much you have to be grateful for. So that's your challenge for the next 30 days, is every single day I want you to come up with something that you can be thankful to God for and thank Him for it. I would suggest, and I do this, I would journal it. I would write it down so that you have a record of all the things, and at the end of the 30 days, you can read back through it and realize just how much God does for you each and every day. So we're going to be reading from Proverbs 15, and up on the board is 16 and 17, and it says, "Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Better is a dinner of herbs when love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it." I came across one of these cartoon e-cards that pop up, every once in a while, and I love this because it really is unfortunately very true. Thanksgiving is all about getting your entire dysfunctional family under one roof and hoping you don't have to call the police. Okay. Now, we chuckle at that, but unfortunately, it's very, very true. We have a lot of issues, and part of that is because Thanksgiving is no longer about being grateful anymore. I've had enough people wish me Happy Turkey Day, and I cringe when I hear that. No, this is not about the turkey. This is not Happy Turkey Day. This is a day to be thankful. I actually have a pastor friend of mine who's decided that for Thanksgiving, and they have a feast, but it's not on Thanksgiving Day. They always do it on Good Friday. And the reason they do that is because they take Thanksgiving Day and they use it as a day of fasting to thank God for all that He's given them. And then they have their feast on Friday to celebrate what God has given them. So, and I'm not advocating that you all need to go out and do that. I'm not suggesting that we all postpone our Thanksgiving feast until Friday. But take the time this week and over the next 30 days to be thankful for God. Because I think part of the reason that we struggle so much with dysfunction is because we are so focused on me, my, I. like Adrian Rogers. He highlighted it this way: we buy things we do not need with money we do not have to impress people we do not like. You might call this the dark side of Thanksgiving, and not every family gathering is a happy one. I know that. I've been around a long time. You know, I've been in ministry since 1984. I'll let you do the math. And the reality is, there is a dark side to Thanksgiving, or the celebration we call Thanksgiving. And I thought about that, and then I was pondering the words of Proverbs 15:15. Listen to what 15:15 says. All the days of the oppressed are wretched, but the cheerful heart has a continual feast. I love that. The cheerful heart has a continual feast. People with a cheerful heart, they can keep Thanksgiving 365 days a year. The reality is that they can be thankful every single day. And I'm hoping by you doing this 30-day challenge, you'll begin to realize that you can be thankful to God each and every day of your life. And it doesn't have to wait for a day where we eat a lot of food and make ourselves sick or watch football games. We can be thankful to God every single day of the year for what He's done for us. Well, Proverbs 15, 16, and 17 give us a hint about how we go about having a cheerful heart. How we go about having a continual feast of thanksgiving. Okay? These attitudes of the heart are within the reach of all of us because they do not depend on your income or your education or your reputation or your position in society or the size of your house or the size of your bank account or any sort of worldly attainment or awards or trophies. The least among us can have a continual feast wherever we go if we take these two verses to heart. Verse 15, or 16 says, better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil. See, I think one of the first secrets you need to start with, if you're going to have a continual feast, if you're going to have Thanksgiving, you're going to be thankful 365 days, you need to fill your heart with faith. And I'm not filling it now. I'm not talking just giving a little bit, but filling your heart so completely that it overflows into the rest of your life. I like that word better at the very beginning of that. Some things are better. Solomon, who was the richest man in the world, does not mean to exalt poverty. This is not a pro-poverty, living on the edge and starving to death type of thing. First off, believers, understand that the Bible says that God said, Jesus said, I have never seen the righteous forsaken, or the faithful begging for bread. God will take care of you. You may not have wealthy, you may not have prime rib, but God will make sure you're cared for. And I think a lot of people are so focused on being wealthy, of having what I don't have, that they stop being grateful for what they do have. And so we start out by adding faith to this mix. We need to fill our lives, fill our heart with faith. Reality, folks, there's always been poor, and there's always going to be poor. The world's resources are not evenly distributed, and I don't care what political system you subscribe to, there is no way you're ever going to redistribute the wealth. There will always be poor people. And that's less a statement of how things ought to be than a statement of the way things are. The reality is, but there's always going to be people who have less than you, and there's always going to be people who have more than you. That's why Jesus said, the poor you will have always with you. Matthew 26:11. Those words, which can seem callous, need to understand that Jesus explains it in the last part of the verse when he says, but you will not always have me. And the reality is, some things are better than other things. And I really believe that what we need first and foremost is not things, but to spend time with our Savior. If Jesus is among you, He needs to be your only priority. Everything else flows out of that relationship. Then you go and feed the poor. Then you go out and clothe the naked. Then you go out and take care of the prisoner. But it all comes out of starting with your relationship with Him. You feed your spirit, and then you feed the hungry. Because it's got to come out of that relationship with Jesus Christ, out of your faith. The words of Solomon remind us that wealth is no cure. It's not going to make us happy. It's not going to solve all our problems. Yes, it's true that money does help some things. Better to have some money than none, I guess, but the rich have large houses, fine furnishings, excellent medical insurance, and protection against many troubles. But they're constantly worried about losing it. Let's face it, death comes to the rich just as done to the poor. Rich people, famous people, they get cancer and they die too. They have divorces. In fact, I think sometimes the wealth gives them more divorce because they get so focused on things. And let's face it, the rich people, just like anybody else, have problems with their kids. Get that call from Junior one night, Dad, I stole the family car and I've wrecked it into a Walmart. Could you come get me? I'm down at the police station. Rich people get those calls too. I think sometimes poor people don't get them because they don't have a car to steal. Wealth provides only a limited protection in this world, just like anything. We're all subject to anything else, and wealth will not compensate for the breakup of a marriage. It will not keep your children out of jail. It will not prevent death. I was reading about a wealthy man whose son died in a plane crash. Somebody was talking to him later, and he says, once you lose your son, you find out there's no such thing as serious money. Money's not serious, but life and death are. Relationship with Jesus Christ is what's truly serious. Wealth cannot compensate you for all the evils in the world. It will not solve your problems. It will not make you a better person. It will simply give you something else to worry about. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we all should be living in poverty and scratching off the dirt off the floor to make our ends meet. God has blessed us. But folks, wealth is relative. If we have to choose between wealth and the fear of the Lord, let us choose the fear of the Lord. In point of fact, most of us don't get the choice. The vast majority of the world will never be wealthy, but we can all fear the Lord. Wealth by definition is relative. You know, as I'm talking about this, I'm preaching about, I'm sitting in my 3-bedroom home. Now, it's not a perfect home. It needs a lot of work. It needs a new roof, and it needs a back room, and all this other stuff. But the reality is I have a roof over my house. I have a backyard, and it's a fence. It needs repair, and I've got a little dog who escapes through the fence all the time, so I have to be walking her on a link out there. But I have a yard to walk her in. I have a car sitting on the front driveway. Admittedly, it's 7 years old, but who cares? I still have a car. It still gets me around. It still takes care, it still gets me where I'm going. I had food tonight. I ate lunch today. I had weird food, but, hang on a second, guys. And I had weird food, I'll admit that. But the reality is that even though I had weird food, the truth of the matter is that I have been blessed beyond all means. The reality is that Americans are some of the wealthiest people in the world. 95% of the world will go to bed hungry tonight. They will make very little to no money. They will live in abject poverty. America is so blessed. I have a computer, and I have a laptop, and I have my tablet, and I have a cell phone. I have all these conveniences, and I have electricity to run them all. And what I've come to realize is God has blessed me beyond all measure. And no matter what I accumulate, they will not give me happiness. Having a multi-million-dollar home and hot and cold running water fountains and all this other stuff will not make me happy. And the understanding here, folks, is that what we have is nothing that we earned. The reality is what we have, we didn't receive. It is all a gift from God. He blesses us. You know, back when I was still doing youth ministry at Del Rio Community Church, we took the youth group on a mission trip to Guatemala. And talk about an interesting experience, because it was. We went to Guatemala, and in the process, we took these kids. They went down there to dig a well and to do some work on a school for the local community. These were the poorest of the poor folks. And if you think anybody in America even comes close, you don't even have a thing to think. Here's the part that amazes me. These people actually lived in the garbage dump. And that's where they lived, and that's where they built their homes, and that's where they got their food. They scavenged in the garbage dump because there were no jobs. There was no way to earn money, and yet the ones who knew Jesus were thankful for what little they had. They were generous. I know my pastor got invited to a dinner one night, and he felt so bad because he walks in, and this lady is basically sacrificing her food so she can be, and he started to deny it, and his guide turned and says, "No, you can't do that. You will break her heart if you do not accept the gift. She knows that Jesus will feed her and take care of her, and she wants you to be blessed by her. Don't take away her ability to bless you." The reality is that we have people all over the world who are in a lot worse shape than we are. And so I believe that we need to learn to be grateful because of what God has done to us. It's better, of course, to live with a roof over your head and all that stuff, but it's better than anything to live in the fear of the Lord in your heart, to have faith. One need not feel sorry for having more than someone else, but I'd be a fool to think that I deserve what I have or what I somehow better than anyone else because of what I have. It doesn't make me better. It just means I'm blessed differently. Let's face it. What do I have that I did not receive, that I did not get as a gift from God? Everything God I have is gift. I didn't create myself. Everything I owe to God. That includes every meal, every drink of clean water, every bit of electricity that powers all my equipment, every book I read, every shirt I wear, and every bowl of soup I eat. All comes from God. And I'm not saying that you need to feel guilty about having more, and that's not what Solomon says. Look around. Someone will always be ahead of you and someone will always behind you, but the reality is that those who have the fear of the Lord, those who live in faith, have something that no one else can get better on. It is better to live in poverty and know the Lord than it is to be the richest man in the world and think you did it yourself. The rich man eventually discovers that his riches take wings and fly away. If he doesn't discover it in this life, he'll discover it when he dies, because of all that he worked for, he leaves behind. And I know this is not a theologically correct joke, but I'm going to tell a little story. This guy is getting ready to die, and so he begs God and says, "Let me bring something with me when I die and go to heaven." God's trying to tell him, "You don't need anything. I'm going to take care of everything. No, I would like to bring something with me when I die." So God says, "Okay, you can bring something. So when you die, have them bury it with you in the coffin, and you can bring that with you to heaven." Okay, I realize this is not theologically correct, so don't argue with me. This is the point. So he thinks about everything that's so important, and he gets gold bricks and has them lined in his coffin, and he gets to heaven with this pile of gold. And of course, St. Peter comes out to greet him. Of course, this kind of joke where it has to be St. Peter. And he looks at him and he says, "Of all the things you could have brought with you, you decided to bring road paving material?" You know, because heaven's streets are paved in gold. The reality is that when I go to heaven, what I want to bring with me is the people I know that I help find Jesus. I want to lead as many people as I can to a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what I want to do. That's who I want to date. That's what I'm looking forward to. The lesson is clear. Most of us will never be truly rich in this world's goods. But we can be rich in faith and love and rich in the knowledge of our God. J.L. Packer tells of an acquaintance whose career was destroyed because of his evangelical convictions. His boss found out of what he believed, and he fired him for actually being a believer. So Packer asked him if he harbored any ill feelings, and he replied, "No. I've known God, and they haven't." Packer goes on to note that most of us would not feel comfortable speaking in such straightforward terms, but the terms are entirely biblical. Knowing God does make a difference, and in the defining characteristic of those who follow Jesus Christ. To know God deeply and intimately, more than makes up for all the things we think we lose because of our faith. 250 years ago, an English pastor named John Gill summarized the blessings of the man who fears the Lord. And understand, this is Old English, so it's a little hard to understand. So just stick with me and listen to what it says. "For such a man, though he has but little, which is the common portion of good men, yet he does not lack. He has enough and is content. What he has with a blessing, and he enjoys it, and God in it, and has communion with him, and has also other bread to eat. The world knows nothing of, and particularly having the fear of God, the eye of God is upon him with pleasure. His heart is towards him, and sympathizes with him in all his troubles. His hand communicates unto him both temporal and spiritual meat, which is given to them that fear the Lord. His angels encamp about him. His power protects him. His secrets are with him, and inconceivable, inexpressible goodness is laid up for him." Let that one sentence sink in if you heard nothing else of what I just said. What he has with a blessing, and he enjoys it, and God in it, and has communion with God. Can the world offer anything better than that? Anything? All the riches, all the wealth, you had everything the world has to offer. Does it offer anything better than having communion with the Creator of the universe? Can the world offer anything better? The second characteristic I believe we need to have Thanksgiving year-round is to fill our homes with love. Listen to what 17 says. "Better a meal of vegetables where there is love than a fattened calf with hatred." And love comes out of your relationship with Jesus Christ. That's who love really is. And love is a hard thing for most people to understand because they think love means what's in it for me, when it should be what's in it for those I care about. Let me share with you a couple other translations of the same verse. CEB says, "Better a meal of greens with love than a plump calf with hate." The CEV says, "A simple meal with love is better than a feast where there is hatred." ERV says, "It is better to eat a little where there is love than to eat a lot where there is hate." And finally the Message, "Better a bread crust shared in love than a slab of prime ribs served in hate." All the versions come out at the same place. The most bountiful feast in the world will be ruined if the people at the table have no love, and love comes of your relationship with Jesus Christ. Discord at the dinner table destroys a good meal. No matter how sumptuous the fare, whether it be prime rib, T-bone steaks, or turkey and dressing with all the trimmings, your cooking may equal what they offer on the Food Channel or the gourmets, but if your loved ones do not love each other, what good is all that effort, all that time, and all the money? You might as well skip it all together and go to Burger King. The word vegetables, I'm getting an echo. The word vegetables refers to the simple fare that a poor family might share. It might be spinach or collard greens or cabbage. In the Depression, the big treat was to get a full baked potato to yourself. In the South, during the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression and all that, potatoes were what people lived on. So a poor family is usually poor, and they're so poor that they're vegetarian by choice, and they're not vegetarian by choice or vegetarian by necessity. When they come together, they share nothing but a handful of stewed greens. It's not extravagant, but it tastes good because it is shared and served with love. Solomon isn't elevating poverty. He merely reminds us that money doesn't bring happiness. It certainly doesn't guarantee a happy family or a harmonious Thanksgiving dinner. How many of you guys are familiar with the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Now, I'll be the first to admit, that's one of those movies that every time I watch it, I cry. I can't help myself. That's just who I am. Okay. The point is, we know these things. I mean, we know all this stuff that Solomon's telling. We don't really need Solomon to tell us, but deep down, we know that faith and love matter more than money or fame. That's one reason why It's a Wonderful Life remains one of the most beloved Christmas movies of all time. Now, I don't know how many of you don't know the story, but George Bailey, played by Jimmy Stewart, contemplates suicide on Christmas Eve. Everything's falling apart. The bank, somebody has embezzled money from the bank. And of course, it turns out to be the guy who owns the bank and not the savings and loan. But anyway, Jimmy Stewart doesn't know any of that. He thinks he's wasted his life. He doesn't see any value. He'd be better off dead. Better if he'd never been created. And so an angel is sent to him to help him see the difference his life has made. As it happens, the three best lines in the movie actually come from Clarence, the angel. First thing he says is strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many others. When he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he? And next he says, you see, George, you've really had a wonderful life. Don't you see what a mistake it would be to just throw it away? And the last line he speaks isn't a spoken line. It's an inscription in a book left by George. It says, remember, George, no man is a failure who has friends, who has loved ones. So if we know these things, why does Solomon have to remind us? Because I think we need reminding. That's why. Because we all live under the spell of the big world with flashing lights, alluring gains, beautiful people, and all the promises of the good life on the other side of the street. And we lust after those things. And when we do so, we stop being thankful for what we have. You know, we've watched the details in the news, and we've heard about brilliant, famous actors and all this other stuff just blow up their lives. And they destroy themselves, and they often do things because they don't realize. But, you know, that's nothing new. You can go all the way back to King David, and powerful men had been tempted by beautiful women who were available to them. And that led to all sorts of foolishness, and ultimately to the sort of behavior that those men and women would have sworn they would never have done. It's a long sentence written that way to emphasize what is left out, which is that those temptations apply not only to the rich and the beautiful people, but also the rest of us well. Some not so beautiful people have done some amazingly dumb things. One can only hope that the finger pointing will lead us to honest self-examination. See, you don't have to be a movie star. You don't have to be a politician. You don't have to be a 4-star general to blow up your life, career, and your family. When you give in to temptation. When you stop thinking, if I only had more, I want that because I can't have it. We need to understand, folks, that it is a wonderful life. Now, I realize it may sound like I've kind of wandered off the subject, but remember, the operative word in all of this is better. It is better to enjoy a simple meal where love abounds than to feast at the finest restaurants in Paris, drink the finest wines, and be surrounded by people who you can't stand. Thousands of people will read Solomon, not in agreement, and then go right out and blow up their family with a round of foolish choices. The thing is, we know these things are true. See, folks, you need to understand something. Thanksgiving isn't a holiday we celebrate on a Thursday. It is something, as a believer, we should make a choice to do every single day. We don't have to live this way. We don't have to live in pursuit of the next big thing or the next big choice or the next big movie. We can pursue being grateful to God. What does it say? See, I have set before you today life and death. Choose life that you may live. That's wonderful advice given by Moses to the children of Israel. But even after all that wandering in the desert, after a whole generation died, they still wanted what they didn't have. And they stopped being grateful for what God had given them. That's why it says in Psalm 78, verses 40 and 41, it says this: how often they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved him in the wasteland. Again and again they put God to the test, and they vexed the Holy One of Israel. The people who knew what God had said either forgot or didn't care or thought they had a better idea or just decided that they wanted something their own way. It never works out. And you come to a wonderful verse like 52 where it says, but he brought his people out like a flock. He led them like sheep through the wilderness. Guess what? God didn't say, I'm going to give up on you. I'm going to keep bringing you through. Even though you're ungrateful, even though you're struggling, I'm still going to bring you through the wilderness. That's one of the best things we can be grateful for, is that God never gives up on us. No matter how stupid we are, no matter how badly we do things, God never gives up on us. That's us, folks. We're sheep. Every time you turn around, you're going your own way. Isaiah 53:6. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Left to ourselves, we'll get lost. We'll wander off. We'll go back to Egypt, or we'll start fighting each other, or we'll end up as supper for the wolves. We're unruly, and we don't like to be led, and sometimes we're just plain stupid. Domesticated sheep are some of the dumbest creatures that ever walk the face of this earth. I learned some stuff. We did a study on Psalm 23 the other day, how a shepherd looks at Psalm 23. And one of the things that just amazes me, according to this shepherd, domesticated sheep, they pasture them in pastures where there's no bushes or trees or ditches. They have to find flat or at most hilly pastures. And you know why? Because if a sheep goes behind a bush and loses sight of the rest of the sheep, it'll sit there and scream its head off until somebody comes and gets it. There might be a sheep just 10 feet away on the other side, but if it can't see it, it assumes it's lost. That's why sheep don't make it in the wild, because they get lost so easily and they panic. And they have no way to defend themselves. They have no nails, they have no claws, they have nothing. Now, I'm not talking about wild sheep or talking about mountain goats or anything like that. I'm talking about domesticated sheep. They simply have no ability to defend themselves. That's why they need a shepherd. And that's us. We don't have a way to defend ourselves spiritually, but God is our shepherd. That's something we can be grateful for. God leads his sheep all the way through the wilderness. By his grace, eventually make it to safety and shelter. Folks, there is a better way to live. But it depends on us believing that our shepherd knows what he's doing and following him. That's why it's so important that we learn to be grateful. If we have gratitude, if we have faith, if we have love, then we have what we need every moment of every day. And all the riches, all the resources, all the everything will not make you better. Matthew Henry says it this way in his commentary. It is therefore far better and more desirable to have but a little in the world, and to have it with good conscience, and keep up communion with God, and enjoy him in it, and live by faith, than to have the greatest plenty and live without God in the world. Matthew Henry and Solomon agree. Some things are better than others. If you have a lot, or if you have a little, as long as you have God, you've got a majority. You've got all that you ever need. Better to have God than to live without him in the world. Now, I'm not going to try to sing it, because I tried to sing it earlier and I butchered it badly, but there's a song by George Beverly Shea. Let me quote a couple lines from it. I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be his than have riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or lands. I'd rather be led by his nail-pierced hands than to be the king of a vast domain and be held in sin's dread sway. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. Perhaps that needs to be our application. I'd rather have Jesus. I'd rather have Jesus than all the treasures in the earth. I'd rather have Jesus than everything the world has to offer, because it will offer me nothing of value. The reality is, as we approach Thanksgiving, I'd rather have Jesus. I'd rather have Jesus than a stuffed turkey dinner. I'd rather have Jesus than all the money and all the wealth in the world. because He is what really matters. I'd rather have Jesus than anything. All that stuff, when I die, it stays here. When I go to heaven, I'm not taking my computer. I'm not taking my library. I'm not taking my books. I'm not taking my car. When I face my Lord, I will face it with just Him and me. And I'll be reminded that what He gives me is all that I'll have. I need to recognize that now. All I have right now belongs to Him. So as you go about the next 30 days, you take that challenge. You spend every day thinking of at least one thing you can be grateful to God for. And there's so many things, and you may have a hard time limiting to at least one a day, but I want you to do at least one. You can come up with 20 or 30, and I suggest you write them down. I recommend that you get a notebook and you write down each day one thing you can be thankful to God for. And when you get to the end of those 30 days, go back and read through your list. I think you'll be stunned to realize just how much God has done for you each and every day. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world has to offer. Let's close in prayer. Father, thank you. We don't deserve your mercy. We are so grateful. Help us to express our gratitude, to remind us of all that you do for us each and every day. I think of the protection you've given me, the business with the hurricane where my house was untouched because you protected us. I thank you for watching out for us and caring for us and providing a place for us. I thank you how you've cared for my family over and over again. I thank you, Lord, for all that you've done through Second Life, through this church. I thank you that you continue to use us. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world has to offer. In your most precious Son's name, amen. So there you go, folks. I kind of guess that falls as my Thanksgiving message. Be thankful. God is so good to you. He's been so good to me. Each and every day He watches out for us. Take the challenge. Take the thankfulness challenge. Don't let it end on what they call Turkey Day, because it's not what Thanksgiving's about. Do you realize back in the 1700s and the 1800s when they would celebrate Thanksgiving, they did it as a day of prayer and fasting? Did you know that? Christians would pray and fast and thank God for all He did. And they would close it with a feast. Because it was a celebration of what God is doing in their lives. Take the time to recognize that God is the founder of every feast you'll ever have. I realize some of you don't live in the United States, and some of you are listening to me on YouTube or on Mixer, and you're thinking, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving. But this isn't about celebrating a holiday. This is about being grateful for all that God has done. God bless you guys. You have a great evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We will talk to you later, guys. God bless. Thank you, Bonnie. Ariana Transit. Marco. Chosen. I'm glad you made it, Transit, Ariana. I was getting worried about you. God bless you guys. Yeah. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Ariana. You guys have a great Thanksgiving week too. Don't forget the message is posted on. It is on our. It's on YouTube, but it's also on the podcast. So, not a problem. I'm just glad you made it. And I realize things happen. I was having problems with my computer crash when I came on earlier, so I had to reboot the computer to get on for services. So, thank you guys.
Mm-hmm.